Tonight on Reporting Scotland, with the NHS under pressure, the Health Secretary says he wants to avoid hospitals being overwhelmed this winter. It comes after a critical incident was declared at Aberdeen's biggest hospital, which led to patients being sent to Dundee and Inverness. A priest is jailed for 16 months for sexually assaulting a sleeping man on a train. Also in tonight's programme, the First Minister considers making non-fatal strangulation a standalone offence. The mother of an Aberdeen student who took her own life after being choked by her abusive boyfriend has been calling for the law to change.
We're seeing these harms perpetrated predominantly against women and girls, and we really need to take a different approach to changing the culture that is sadly all too prevalent.
The Borders battle over plans for huge electricity storage facilities like these.
I'll be live from Ibrox with tonight's sport as Rangers get set to host Tottenham Hotspur in what is a massive Europa League clash.
Hello, I'm Sally Magnuson. Welcome to Thursday's programme. The number of flu cases in Scotland has doubled in the last week, putting extra pressure on hospitals. Already A&Es are extremely busy, and 1 in every 10 ambulances spent more than 2 hours stuck outside a hospital last week because there was no space inside. Last month, if you remember, NHS Grampian declared a critical incident because of overcrowding, which meant patients in Aberdeen having to be diverted to other hospitals. Today, the Health Secretary, Neil Gray, said he wanted to avoid further critical incidents at Scotland's emergency departments this winter. Our health correspondent, Lisa Summers, has more.
Worst hospital to say would be the Royal Infirmary. This is the A&E department just in here. And each one of these is a crew. And all of them have a patient on board waiting to hand over to hospital.
Inside ambulance control today.
Longest wait time would be over 100 minutes now.
These are the ambulances Ewan's talking about, stuck outside Edinburgh's Royal Infirmary. Everyone waiting is a crew unable to get back on the road.
It's not uncommon, recently anyway, to see patients, some waiting over 24 hours for an ambulance to take them into hospital. I can see it being extremely frustrating and somewhat embarrassing. Do you know, you're taking these patients into hospital because they need to be there, but the hospitals just don't have the rooms to facilitate them.
Winter is when the NHS faces its most intense pressures. Last week, over 2,000 people waited over half a day in A&E, and emergency flu admissions are also on the rise. Last month, NHS Grampian declared a critical incident because its main hospital in Aberdeen was full.
We've made some improvements in the ambulance queuing, but we still experience ambulance queuing on a very regular basis. And I guess the really important bit is to make everyone aware that if you have a critical condition, then you are prioritised and brought straight into the hospital.
On a visit to NHS 24 today, the Health Secretary insisted that measures were being put in place to ensure staff and patients were safe this winter.
I want to make sure that we avoid a situation of having situations that we saw in Grampian, for instance, in any part of the country. And we will work with our clinicians, our trade union colleagues, our staff, as well as the health and social care partnerships to see an improvement in the situation.
It's a testing time for the NHS.
Hi, you're through to Sylvie. I'm a call handler at NHS 24. Can you give me a brief reason for your call today?
And services like this will only get busier with Christmas around the corner. Lisa Summers, Reporting Scotland.
A priest who was caught sexually assaulting a sleeping man on a train has been jailed for 16 months. Father Daniel Doherty's behaviour was spotted by fellow passengers travelling to Edinburgh Waverley. You might find some of the details in Stephen Gordon's report. Distressing.
The witnesses were travelling by train to Edinburgh's Waverley station when they became concerned. They contacted the authorities after seeing the priest fondling a passenger who was sitting in the seat next to him, who'd passed out after drinking. Now, when he was being questioned by train staff, they noticed that Father Daniel Doherty's trousers were partially undone. He told them he was friends with the younger man and that he'd been affirming him. The victim didn't initially make a complaint when speaking to Transport Police because Father Doherty was stood nearby, but he did so 2 days later. In October, Doherty from Falkirk admitted sexually assaulting the man on 3 occasions. Now, at the time, the Archdiocese of St Andrews in Edinburgh offered what they called a profound apology and confirmed that the priest has been removed from active ministry. Today at Kirkcaldy Sheriff Court, Doherty was sentenced to 16 months in prison and placed on the sex offenders register for 10 years.
The First Minister has pledged to consider calls to make non-fatal strangulation a standalone offence. John Swinney was speaking in Holyrood after the case was raised of a young woman who took her own life after being choked and strangled by her boyfriend. Scotland's the only part of the UK yet to introduce specific legislation to address non-fatal strangulation. This report from our political correspondent Andrew Kerr contains information you might find upsetting.
Emily Drury was a law student at Aberdeen University. A life and career lay ahead of her, but in 2016 she took her own life after abuse by her boyfriend, which included choking and slapping. Now her mother has a campaign and a petition to make what's called non-fatal strangulation a specific standalone offence.
So we're seeing many young women and girls, predominantly young women and girls, subjected to these harms it can be through domestic abuse, it can be so-called consensual sex, and we believe nobody can consent to this because they don't actually fully understand the harms that they're being subjected to.
The issue was raised at First Minister's questions.
Non-fatal strangulation is a known, serious and growing problem. 35% of women between the ages of 16 to 34 have experience of it, and each year that passes sees more violence, strokes and deaths. It's clear that the common law route is not working.
The First Minister explained that it was already a criminal offence under the common law of assault with a maximum penalty of life imprisonment, and added this.
We will look at all of the measures we need to take in terms of criminal offences, but I will lead from the front a campaign to say to boys and men in Scotland that their behaviour has got to improve.
The First Minister said he would give the call serious consideration. Fiona Drury said she was heartened by that.
Tonight, the Scottish Solicitors Bar Association said there was no need for a standalone law, but the campaign will continue. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
The standing charge in our energy bill is what we pay to be connected to the network and all the infrastructure around it. That price has gone up by 43% in the last 5 years. Now the regulator Ofgem is proposing to give consumers a choice. Instead of paying the standard charge, we could pay a higher rate for every energy unit of energy used instead. It's not, when it comes down to a particularly easy choice, and as Gillian Sharp reports, will vary according to circumstance.
Cheeky boy. High energy use is an unavoidable fact of life for mum of two, Alana Jane Simpson. Health conditions and a young family mean needing to keep a level of warmth. But would today's proposals make a difference to her?
I think even regardless of what option I choose, if I continue as I am or if I have it all intertwined into one bill, it's not going to make any difference because the money's still being taken out regardless of how you choose it. For young families and people like myself who are vulnerable and who are unwell, standing charges should just be taken away completely, and you just literally pay for what you use.
So what are standing charges and the changes proposed? Our energy bills are made up of a charge per unit of energy and a daily standing charge for each fuel type. Ofgem says the standing charge works out at around £300 a year, although this varies around the country. The new proposal would mean consumers having a choice to scrap the separate charge payment and instead pay a higher rate for their unit price. Ofgem received an unprecedented 30,000 public submissions on standing charges.
Some people will be better off by paying through their unit rate, but some people won't. So it's really important that we give customers the right information and choice about how they pay their debt and how they pay their standing charges.
What's needed now, say some, is more radical thinking.
I think the best thing I could say is underwhelmed by what was announced today. It just isn't taking us far enough down the road to a fairer, more equitable energy system. It's being presented differently. We are still all being asked to pay a share of what are incredibly high standing charge type costs.
Citizens Advice Scotland says these proposals are likely to make billing more complicated.
Typically people who will benefit are people who might live alone or people with low usage, but the main point to get across here is that it's a small part of people's bills and it's a small proportion of the population who will benefit from this. And this winter and into next, energy bills are still far too high for far too many people.
Any changes under these proposals wouldn't come in before next winter. Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland.
In order to make the country more self-sufficient in terms of our energy needs and meet climate targets, battery farms like these are going to be needed right across Scotland. And no, we're not talking here about hens. These ones are used to store energy from renewable sources like wind farms. But in some cases, the impact on the communities around them is huge. In the Borders, one local campaign group says plans for 6 farms, the equivalent of 128 football pitches, will rip the heart out of their community. Cameron Buttle has been to meet them.
The one that we're really fighting hard, because it's before the council at the moment, is Pittlesheugh.
In Shona Blackie's kitchen, the campaigners leading the fight against battery farms plan their next move. Even though the land around them hasn't been touched yet, they say the proposals alone have already had a devastating effect on them, the community and their future.
All these applications coming through because they continue to be approved.
Richard Hona moved down here nearly 20 years ago to recover from a serious road accident. One of the farms would be outside his back window.
Dealing with visible burns injuries are quite traumatising, so I wanted away from people and out in the country. My initial thoughts when I heard about the development going ahead was, yes, I do want to move, but I can't move. There's no, unless I give the house away, I'm not going to get rid of it.
Some plans have already been approved and some are being lodged. But if they all go through, there will be 6 battery storage facilities around Eccles and Leatham. Campaigners say they will total more than 200 acres.
If you see the tree line at the far end of the field there, and look all the way down this field to the other end, to where that brown hedgerow is, if the application gets approved, all of this will be one large battery farm. Now, the local campaigners say they appreciate that these kind of facilities have to be built somewhere, but what they say is they feel there are better sites elsewhere away from local communities.
Experts say there's a need for significant battery storage across Scotland to deal with an increase in green energy production. But there has to be a balance, and there is a need for a more systematic approach.
They need to be controlled and curtailed. It doesn't make sense to have huge amounts of land covered in batteries. I would advise against having wholesale coverage of land with batteries. We need to have significant battery storage, but it has to be balanced.
Scottish Borders Council said it follows all current planning guidelines, and in larger projects it provides the assessments to the Scottish Government. The government said that the impact on communities and the accumulative effect of multiple applications are important considerations in the consent process. Cameron Buttle, reporting Scotland, Leatham.
Our business and economy editor Douglas Fraser joins me now. That was the Borders, Douglas, but battery farms are going to be something that communities all across the country are going to face, I suppose, in the years ahead.
One community concerned about the impact of batteries. There are at least 8 of these giant batteries already operating in Scotland, taking in power when demand is low, often at night, and releasing it at a profit when demand is higher to balance the system and handle the variable supply of wind power. Well, earlier this year there were 12 projects in construction. The target is for nearly 15 times the capacity being built this year, with numerous applications in the planning pipeline around the country. These will go near substations and along the line of high voltage cables. One of the biggest under construction is south of Motherwell near Lesmahago and Colburn on the M74. We already know the spread of high pylons and substations is meeting resistance at community level in the northeast and in the Highlands. A lot more of that transmission capacity will be required through southern Scotland too, if the huge offshore wind farms being planned are to transmit power to customers south of the border and overseas. And while we're on course to rely more on wind and solar, batteries and more hydro will have to be part of the mix for storage.
And while we've got you, just your thoughts on the Ofgem story we heard earlier. It was discussed in our package, but do you feel that getting a choice on standing charges in the way that they're suggesting will make a difference to people's pockets?
Well, some people could be a bit better off. It doesn't mean standing charges disappear. They're loaded onto the cost per unit of gas or electricity. So low energy users can gain. For some people who use more energy, perhaps because they need to keep their homes warm for health reasons, they could be worse off if they move away from standing charges, and they'll be allowed to retain them. So it differs depending on how much energy you use. And when it was already quite complex to choose a supplier and a tariff, the downside of this plan is that it becomes a lot more complicated.
Douglas Fraser, thank you very much for that. Some of the day's other stories now. Scotland's former Chief Medical Officer, Dr Catherine Calderwood, has been excused from giving evidence to the UK COVID-19 inquiry on health grounds. Dr Calderwood resigned during the pandemic after breaking lockdown rules. She was initially given a year's grace after medical reports said she was unfit to provide evidence. The inquiry chair, Baroness Hallett, says her decision is open to review if Dr Calderwood's health changes. The opening of the UK's first consumption room for illegal drugs in Glasgow is to open within weeks after being delayed because of water supply testing. The facility was originally due to open in October. The idea is to help combat the rate of drug deaths, which are the highest in Europe. Ports operator Forth Ports has secured £50 million of private investment for infrastructure at its base in Leith. It follows the company winning its largest offshore wind contract with a firm building a wind farm off the Angus coast. Forth Ports says the investment will create up to 50 new jobs. Let's get tonight's sport now with Lewis, who is at Ibrox. Are you keeping warm?
Well, Sally, I know you're not looking for a weather report from me, and this probably isn't the technical term, but it is absolutely Baltic here. But yes, a fascinating game in store here tonight. In just over an hour's time as Rangers host Tottenham Hotspur. More on that in a moment. But first, let's turn our attention to the Conference League, because Hearts are in action right now against Copenhagen. And well, here at Ibrox, it really is shaping up to be a fascinating game before a ball has even been kicked. Part of that, of course, due to the return of former Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou here to Glasgow. But as darkness descends around Ibrox and the temperature certainly drops here, you get a real sense of the occasion, not just Postecoglou's return, but both teams go into this one tied on 10 points. And both managers are expecting a real challenge and, of course, a lively atmosphere.
We had already in this past year a few really good opponents here in European nights. This club has a big history in that. So for the players, these are very challenging and really nice evenings that they can write history.
We've got a pretty clear idea of how challenging it is to play them here in front of that crowd and the atmosphere. But at the same time, exciting. You know, you're looking forward to big games, and I'm sure the players are as well.
So the manager and the players clearly looking forward to this one. So too is one former player I spoke to earlier. He's pulled on the Rangers shirt and plied his trade in the English Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, it's a top side that they're playing. Obviously, it's a step up in quality, but Rangers come into this game in good form. They've won the last 4 games, scoring 14 goals, 3 consecutive clean sheets. It's probably their most kind of their best moment in the league, I would say, so far, or in the season so far. So they come into it in good shape. Tottenham, not so much. They're not on a good run, definitely not keeping clean sheets. They've got defensive problems this evening as well. So Rangers have got a good chance tonight. With it being at Ibrox as well, it gives a wee bit of an extra edge to the game.
You've played in the Premier League, you've pulled on the Rangers shirt. A lot is made of the gulf between Premier League sides and Scottish sides. What is that gulf though? Can Rangers bridge it?
In a one-off game, yes, they couldn't do it over the course of a season. It is a sizable gulf, I would have to say, the difference between the two leagues. But in a one-off game here, anything's possible. I was here for the Liverpool game 2 seasons ago maybe, and that didn't end so well for Rangers, with possibly a stronger team than they've got now. But I don't think this Tottenham team's as strong as that Liverpool team was. Rangers, as I said, come into it in good form, so there's always a chance.
And it is always a special occasion, a European night at any level. With Ange Postecoglou coming back, there is that added element though, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt he'll be giving it too much thought. He's got enough on his plate at the minute with what's happening at club level for him in the league. Of course, coming back to Glasgow will be nice for him, but I doubt it's going to be in the forefront of his mind. He's only thinking about trying to get a result for Spurs tonight. But it will give the Rangers fans something to cheer about. I don't know about cheering.
Well, just to bring you right up to speed, some breaking news, and that Hearts have just fallen behind against Copenhagen in their Conference League game. But back here, this is a stadium known for its quite incredible European atmosphere, so I went out and about to speak to some of the fans who'll be contributing to the noise later on.
We're definitely playing better, but it's always a hard game, isn't it?
It will be very, very tough. Premier League, one of the best, you know what I mean? It's going to be a hard game.
But you're feeling optimistic?
Aye, Thursday night, isn't it? You never know, mate.
This is my first game, so I'm hoping I'll bring some luck to them. I've never been at a game before, so this is me, so I'm excited for it.
You just never know with Rangers. In Europe, it's hit and miss, really. I'm not overly confident, if I'm honest, but we take a draw all day long.
A couple of goals from Danilo and Desters, and yeah, I think we're going to win.
So can Rangers go one big step closer to making the knockout rounds? That all remains to be seen. Team news has just been released. You can get all of that on the BBC Sport website. You can also keep up to date with all the European action there and listen to live commentary on Sportsound tonight. Back to you in the studio, Sally.
You was going to put a scarf on, would you? Now, if you had to draw what keeps you going when life gets hard, what would you come up with? That was the question posed to asylum seekers and refugees in Glasgow by the Mental Health Foundation. Aileen Clark caught up with one refugee who answered the question with cycling.
When Nala Abdullah fled the war in her home country of Sudan, she arrived here knowing no one. At Glasgow's Kelvin Grove, as the art project Boxes of Hope goes on show, she told me how it was learning to ride a bike that gave her hope of a brighter future.
When I arrived, it was difficult. I was alone. I don't have family here. I left my family in Sudan. The bike, it helped me to see the beauty of this city and to discover the life here. I was not a cycle person, or I start from the scratch. As our culture, it's forbidden for girls to cycle. And but here it helped me to feel sense of belonging. It let me feel like there is many things to discover here in this city, and it pushed me to go out.
It was a Glasgow cycling group who got Nala pedalling, and it's touching for them to know the huge difference they've made.
People don't realise just the impact of something so simple as teaching someone to ride a bike, but it's really great to know and just really kind of heartwarming to think that that's the impact that you've had on someone, and as a group that's what we can do and can help for other people do as well.
Out on the bike, Nala's confidence was built up and it gave her a community. Meanwhile, she was granted refugee status. She's able to work, and she's working with a charity helping ethnic minority women. And guess what? She's asking them to get on their bikes.
It made me be happier. It helps physically and mentally, emotionally. Giving me friends, of course.
All from a bicycle?
Yes, all from the bicycle.
report from Aileen Clark. We've got the weather now with Judith. Intelligence from Ibrox informed us it was Baltic.
I did laugh at you telling Lewis to get a scarf on.
He had a glad neck, as my mother used to call it.
Well, I thought exactly the same, so I was with you as well. A lot of scenes like this of late, haven't we? It's been that cold, static weather, frosts and mist and fog, but things are about to change as we head through the course of the weekend. So quite a big change in the forecast coming our way. It was an all or nothing kind of day with their skies like this behind me, or those greyer skies that we saw in the earlier Weather Watchers pictures. So the high pressure that's brought all this very settled, stagnant weather, if you like, starts to shift away to the east over the next couple of days. This cold front sinking south later tomorrow. That will sweep away all the mist and the murk. Behind it, it brightens up. It turns colder as well on Saturday. But then this warm front comes in on Sunday, introducing windier conditions, some cloudy skies, outbreaks of rain, but also a lot milder as well. Now, as far as tonight's concerned, it's quite a cloudy night, mist and low cloud in the mix. The clearest skies up towards the northeast, and we will see a frost as well under that cloud and under those clear skies. We could see -6 Celsius. Some bits and pieces of rain coming into the south. A misty, murky start to the day tomorrow, and a chilly one with the frost as well, and some dampness across more southern parts of the country. Now, as we head through the course of the day, we'll start to see that front making inroads across the northern Isles. Outbreaks of showery rain here. The wind's starting to pick up as well, a sign of things to come. Some of that rain into Caithness. The best of any sunshine tomorrow, I think, will be across the northeast. Still feeling cold despite the slight rise in temperatures, and staying largely dry across the southeast as well. Bits and pieces of rain for the south, mainly over the higher ground. We might see some slithers of brightness down towards the southwest Kintyre, around the Glasgow area as well. We pick up on our front again through Tiree, right through Skye, up across the northwest Highlands. Some outbreaks of showery rain. The Western Isles starting to see something drier and clearer as we head into tomorrow evening. So that front sinks southwards, weakening as it does tomorrow night. Thicker cloud, bits and pieces of rain. Clearing up behind it, clearer skies, I should say, a scattering of showers for the west and the north, of the wintry flavour over higher ground. Dry and sunny for many parts initially on Saturday, some scattered showers for the west and the north, but it will cloud over. And then on Sunday, it's a windy start to the day, clouding over, but certainly turning noticeably milder. That's your forecast.
Thanks so much, Judith. And a quick look at tonight's main news again. The number of flu cases in Scotland has doubled in the last week, with 1 in every 10 ambulances spending more than 2 hours stuck outside a hospital. Health Secretary Neil Gray says he wants to avoid further critical incidents at A&E departments this winter. Graham Stewart will be here with your late news at around 10:30 tonight, but from everyone on the team here, enjoy your evening.